If you go on Twitter, you're going to find that the influencers and the TikTokers are hyping this thing up to be the next best superhero movie that Sony cooked, that it's the best of the trilogy, which for some it might be. But you know what? I've grown accustomed to never listening to influencers because it's us critics that are going to tell you the real verdict of this movie. So let's find out. Venom: The Last Dance is the finale in the Venom trilogy, and hopefully one of the last Sony Spider-Man universe movies, because I can't stand these things anymore. Once again, stars Tom Hardy as both Eddie Brock and Venom. This time he wrote the story with Kelly Marcel, who also wrote the screenplay and then makes her directorial debut here. Eddie and Venom are on the run, hunted by both of their worlds, and with the net closing in, the duo are forced into a devastating decision that will bring the curtains down on Venom and Eddie's last dance. Listen, if you're not a fan of the Venom movies, you're not going to like this movie. If you're a fan of one of them, you might like it. I'm not a fan of the Venom movies. The second one, Let There Be Carnage, I can at least enjoy in a goofy, silly way because that movie knew exactly what it was. And when I saw the trailer for Venom Last Dance, I was hoping that that tone was going to carry over. And it seemed like it was going to carry over. Unfortunately, my expectations of that were dampered because this movie, to put it mildly, is fucking boring. There's little fun to be had with Venom The Last Dance. There's little goofiness, there's little silliness. This movie just wastes so much time, so much of its screen time on absolute slop. The whole middle part of this movie is a whole bunch of nothing. It feels so much like Madam Web and Morbius. Just nothing. Empty space, blank canvas. That's what this movie is for the majority of it. When it actually is trying to be goofy and silly, that's when the movie is at its best. But unfortunately, those moments are few and far between. They are so brief. Eddie and Venom's relationship is still really good. The last action set piece that happens in the movie has a bit of spark and energy to it that was completely needed throughout the rest of this movie, but it's far too late into the movie. The rest of the movie is just a dour, soulless, lifeless affair. There is no spark here to this movie, and that's why I was so worried when Kelly Marcel was going to direct this movie that she wouldn't inject any energy into it, and she doesn't until you get to that last act. And everybody's probably going to come at me and be like, well, it's supposed to be more than that. It's a road trip movie for Eddie and Venom. And it's like, I understand that, but it's a road trip movie with a family I don't give two shits about. Not to mention, a lot of the acting in this movie feels very amateurish. A lot of robotic line readings, a lot of people that look like they haven't stepped foot in front of a screen. And I've seen a lot of these actors before, and you could tell that they just didn't care. They were here just to collect their paychecks. Even Tom Hardy at points, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. You could tell by his facial expressions, by the way he was delivering certain lines, that he just doesn't want to do this anymore. He doesn't want to be stuck in this world. He doesn't want to go to the MCU as Eddie or Venom again. He's just like, yep, it was because it was a waste of time before. The MCU automatically undid it, and rightfully so. Thank God. This is a movie that is trying to pull so many punches, and it fails miserably. It is Sony really waving a towel in your face. Not like a white towel. You know when they say throw in the towel? No, they're not throwing in the towel. They're waving it in front of your face, being like, yes, you have to see this movie because the universe is still continuing. Look, if this movie doesn't do good, and if Kraven the Hunter doesn't do good, Sony's just got to pack it in. Stop attempting to make these movies that are so boring because they're not working. And a lot of what makes this movie so boring is that the majority of this movie, the middle of this movie, is just all exposition dumps. It's exposition dump after exposition dump after exposition dump. Every single line of dialogue for a good 45 to 50 minutes of this movie is exposition dump. The movie is over explaining everything to you. It's spoon feeding everything to you. If you don't understand what I mean by the hieroglyphics that are coming out of my mouth, let me put it in simpler terms. The movie thinks you're a fucking idiot. You're always 5 steps ahead of the characters. It's the most predictable script ever. You know exactly what's going to happen. You would think that somebody like Chiwetel Ejiofor would chew up the scenery as a villain, but really, in my eyes, he's the secondary villain, because let's talk about the actual villain in my eyes for this movie, and that is Null. He is introduced in a voiceover in the beginning, and when that started, I was like, oh, this is definitely a bad omen for the movie. A voiceover, he is played by Andy Serkis, but as I've said, Null to me is the main villain of the movie. You could look at it in a different way. You could say that Strickland, who is Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, you could say that he's the main villain, but to a point, he's not. You'll see what I mean when you see the movie, but everything that's happening really revolves around Null. And the thing is that Sony thinks they're setting Null up for future movies. To me, he was the main villain of this movie. The main villain of the movie that's in the movie for 45 seconds. That's the best you got. Noel in this movie just sits on a chair, sends his minions to do his bidding, and has his head in his arm like this on his throne. You would think that one of the most powerful villains in Marvel Comics would show the power that he has. Nope. Apparently they're saving that for probably movies that aren't going to come. And like I was saying, this movie just lacks so much spark and energy when there is action early in the movie. Like there's this action scene that takes place in a riverbed, and it is the most chaotic thing I have ever seen. It is so choppily edited. There's no spark to it. There's no spunk to it. It's trying to be something different, and I applaud it for that. It doesn't work. It's too chaotic. The camera's trying to pan to different areas of the riverbed where nothing's actually happening, and then it cuts away as something happens and it goes back into the water. And it was really, really jarring to see that type of editing and that type of filmmaking in a movie like this. Now, I get it. These movies have lower budgets. So if they make money, they're of course going to make more. This has a $120 million budget, but you would never believe that because even some of the special effects and the visual effects look absolutely atrocious. The dialogue is so ham-fisted and so fake. I could not believe that dialogue like this made it into a comic book movie. The moments where the movie leans into the goofy silliness of Let There Be Carnage, that's where I was having the most fun with Venom: The Last Dance. But unfortunately, those moments are brief. They are fleeting moments of goofiness. When it's leaning into the tone of the first one, it's sort of at its best. But see, I could have probably been more lenient on this movie if it had meshed the tone of the first one with the goofy tone of the second one and just called it a day. That's essentially what it's trying to do, but this movie is so dour and dull and over serious. It's more serious than the first one that I just left crying tears of boredom. I was not a fan of this movie. I'm not a fan of this Sony universe. It really did feel like at least the middle chunk of this movie felt like Madam Web, Morbius, as boring as those movies. And that is a shame. I wanted something along the lines of the goofy silliness of Let There Be Carnage. I wanted this movie to know what it is. And at times it does, especially those moments in the trailer when you see Venom use the symbiote to, I guess, possess like a horse or a frog. Fun. That was fun, but there's not enough of that. And I will say, I don't think there's enough of Venom. The Eddie Brock and Venom relationship is good. The set piece at the end is somewhat decent, and it felt like it had some spark and some energy to it. The rest of the movie dealing with this road trip aspect with the family, I did not care one bit. I was left bored to tears with what felt like amateurish acting, really poor directing, and just exposition dump after exposition dump. I can just wipe my hands clean of this trilogy, never watch it again. Maybe I'll watch Let There Be Carnage if I just need something to put me in a good mood, because that's not a good movie, but I am entertained by it. Yep, this whole Sony universe is just failing, and I don't think that they're aware that it's failing, and that's the sad part. Venom: The Last Dance is worse than stale popcorn. So if you guys have seen Venom: The Last Shit Fuck, let me know what you think of it in the comments section below. I'll leave my link to my website in the description below as well, and rank the Venom movies for me as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.